Hi everyone, I'm attorney Poonam Minhas and I practice U.S. immigration law all over the United States. Today I would like to talk about a recent successful N-336 case. This one had many issues. Some of those issues were lack of good moral character, lack of extenuating circumstances, a conviction within the 5-year statutory period, confusions about the arrest, and many more issues. So please stay tuned as I cover the timeline of the case, the issues, what I evaluated, and what happened at the interview. So the first thing I want to cover is a timeline, but before I jump into it, I just want to give you a brief background about the client situation. So the client was represented by previous counsel, and the N-400 application was filed. It ultimately ended up in a denial. And when this person came to us for a second opinion, the major concerns were, am I eligible for the N-336? And if the N-336 result doesn't end up in my favor, will I have any problems in the future if I want to reapply for citizenship? Great questions. We did cover that. And those questions are usually covered in a consultation. There were no issues at that point. And yes, the client was eligible for the N-336 after we went over everything during the consultation. So the timeline looked something like this. The denial was around February of this year, and we filed the N-336 way ahead of that 30-day deadline that you get with USCIS if you are filing the N-336. So it was filed way ahead of that. Around May, which is like 2 months later, we found out that the client was scheduled for a hearing on the N-336, and that was sometime this month. And we had a good amount of time to really prepare for the interview, but everything was filed up front. All the evidence, the memorandum, the arguments, everything was presented to USCIS up front when we did that filing in March, which is very important. You can't just expect to file a bare minimum application and then expect this to go in your favor. You really have to nail the arguments and show how you can overcome that N-400 denial and meet the grounds of citizenship. So the interview occurred this time in July, and lo and behold, the day of the interview, my client was approved or recommended for approval, and it was great. It was a wonderful experience. And I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you may have N-336s that are still pending, and it's been a while. So there's no guarantee that you're going to get a decision within 180 days as it states on the USCIS website. Cases could take longer, and it really depends on what you filed and how complicated that case is. So be aware that not all cases are the same. Every case is different, and each case has to be evaluated. So this one took about, I want to say, about 4 months from the time of filing up until getting the result of the approval. Now let's talk about the issues. If you watched the beginning of this video, I did briefly cover it, but I'll cover it in detail now. So one of the issues that came up in the denial notice was that USCIS alleged that the client did not have extenuating circumstances. And of course, I do want to mention that when a person files for N-400 and there are arrests, there are convictions, you have to follow the instructions that are on the USCIS website. There's like a whole page of instructions as to how you need to establish good moral character and explain like what led up to the arrest, what were the extenuating circumstances. So you can't really expect to file bare minimum and then not expect to testify to it at the interview. This is something that USCIS officers do. Just because you took a conviction within the statutory period, or it's been many years since your last arrest or conviction, they do go past the 5-year or the 3-year statutory period, depending on what basis you filed that N-400 application. So one of them was extenuating circumstances. Another issue was lack of good moral character. My client was being compared to someone that was not like normally in a community of being someone with morals. And that could really strike you as, wait a second, I'm being presented as such a bad person. How can I prove that I'm not this? I'm not what USCIS claims I am. And then other issues were confusion about the arrest. So there were several arrests and there was confusion leading up to what happened. And then why did you plead to what you did? And why did you take this conviction? And explaining what the actual plea was and what led up to it, if there was any circumstances that led you to take this plea. There was like so many allegations and so much confusion that really made the officer question and say, you know what, I don't think you are eligible for citizenship and this is why we're going to deny you. So there were a lot of allegations. There's a few more that I don't really want to mention because obviously I have to keep it confidential, but this is just a gist of some of the things that were mentioned. And of course, the other one that looks pretty damaging is when you take a conviction within the statutory period. So they automatically just think, okay, you know what? This is lack of good moral character, and plus you engaged in some type of unlawful act or whatever reasoning they give. And you really have to see why this decision was made. And at that time, it also is based on your testimony. So this person went in for their N-400 interview part, and they were questioned about the arrest. They were questioned about, what plea was taken, what happened, and then it led to that denial. So now let's talk about the evaluation part of it. This is where I reviewed the denial. I spoke to the client. I went over what happened at the interview and got to the bottom of a lot of things. So there was USCIS error, believe it or not. And you're probably asking yourself how and why. Well, one of the major things I saw was, of course, I would have to check the arrests and the convictions and then match them with how the INA views it. Of course, a lot of these arrests that people have are state specific. So if it's from a certain state, how is it viewed? And then what is that statute? And you have to compare it with the immigration laws to see, does it rise to the level of you getting a denial for the N-400? So when I reviewed it, I did see that the conviction was not actually reviewed the proper way. And even if there was a claim to engaging in an unlawful act, then of course there were certain guidelines that the officer would have to follow in order to really say, you know what, you're not eligible, so you should just wait out the statutory period to refile. So there was issues in the conviction, how it was evaluated, and there were several other things that I saw that needed to be corrected, and the client went ahead and got that done. The other thing I want to mention is that the client was not given the opportunity to present the extenuating circumstances and to show that, they are a person of good moral character. So, that's usually done when USCIS is leaning towards a denial and they issue a notice of intent to deny, which is also called a NOID, or a request for evidence, which is an RFE. So it's really important that if USCIS is really leaning towards a denial and this person may qualify if they meet these requirements in order to establish what they're alleging that they don't have, and they actually do have the proof of it, but they were never given the opportunity, then that may be grounds of filing an N-336 and really getting your client to establish the good moral character and the extenuating circumstances surrounding the arrest and the conviction and that whole thing. Okay, now we're going to cover the last part, which is what happened at the N-336 hearing, aka the interview. So again, I want to remind you, if you've been watching my previous videos, it is not a hearing before a judge. It is a brand new USCIS officer who reviews your application de novo, which is considers everything. So it is a brand new officer. It is not the same officer that questioned you during your N-400 application. I would like to say that it was a great experience. The officer was very knowledgeable. It was actually a supervisor and also an attorney that I spoke to, and so did my client when we went in for the N-336 hearing. And the best part was that as soon as we walked in, it was recommended for approval already. And that's why it's so, so important to file everything up front. The arguments, the case law, the mountain of evidence, really attacking everything that was alleged against you. So the overall experience in this office was fantastic. The officer was very understanding, very knowledgeable, like I said. And, it was something that could have gone either way because it is a conviction within the statutory period, and that could be viewed as a negative. But there were so many positive factors that outweighed the negative. And of course, we did show them the law. We discuss how this client does qualify for citizenship now and doesn't have to wait the full statutory period to reapply. So it was a great experience. Overall, I would say the hearing was about 2 hours, and sometimes it could be less than that. But my client was given the opportunity to be heard, and I was grateful that it was a great experience, and it worked out in my client's favor. So my client is going to be going for the oath ceremony and will be becoming a citizen. But I wanted to share this with all of you because I know some of you have been, anxiously waiting for me to update you on more N-336 cases. So this was something I definitely wanted to share with you right away, fresh out the oven, if you could say. I do want to say thank you for everyone who has been watching. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It is very important that you subscribe, like the video, so it gets sent to other people who might be, searching for some type of hope, some type of, guidance on their N-336 cases or their N-400s. And I hope today's video was helpful. If it was, please do share this with your friends and family. You never know who this is going to help. And I'll be back with more information, more successful cases, updates about USCIS, EOIR, DHS, you name it. I know there's a lot of things happening right now under the Trump administration, but I do want to say don't lose hope. You can still win cases, and each case is different. So if you are unsure about what needs to be done, get on the phone, speak to someone you're comfortable with that is experienced in immigration law, and, see if you're eligible and what you can file, what you can't file. And it doesn't have to be necessarily citizenship. It can be any type of immigration matter. Just really schedule a consultation. You have nothing to lose. So thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon. I really hope today's video was helpful. Thanks.